Welcome to an episode of InRange. I've got in my hands today my Chiappa reproduction of the 1887 Winchester 12 gauge lever action shotgun. And I've already done videos about this on the channel before. I'll go through some of the history here in brief synopsis, so this is a complete video. But I'm not going to spend most of the time on that. What I want to talk about today is the gun itself, how it works, my experience with it at our recent Deadeye match in Utah, our cowboy action style shooting event. And the reality is that pop culture has kind of lied to you. People, every time I post a picture of this gun or talk about this gun or even mention it on the channel in any way, there's a flurry of comments about how cool they are and how everybody wants one. And there's a number of reproductions on the market as well as originals. There's Chinese ones, two different manufacturers, and this Chiappa, which is ostensibly the best of breed, but all of them, including the originals, are sort of flawed designs with a lot of weird idiosyncrasies and problems. But first of all, let's talk about what this is. 1887, this gun is put out by Winchester in 10 gauge and 12 gauge, and it is ostensibly the first successful commercially produced repeater shotgun. Before this, you had, of course, single shots, coach guns, side-by-sides, etc. But Winchester came to John Browning and said, we want a repeating shotgun, and his idea was, well, we should make a pump action. And they, being Winchester and known for their lever actions, said, no, we don't want that. We want a lever action. That is our brand. That is what we're known for. So he's like, all right. And he came up with this. And John Browning, being the genius that he was, made this work. I mean, he did create a functional design. And it's a functional design that has some very interesting perks. 5 rounds in the tube magazine, 1 on the lifter and 1 in the chamber, can get you to the point where you can have 7 rounds in this gun ready to go as quickly as you cycle the action and pull the trigger. That is, if it makes it through all 7 rounds. And so, by the way, this is the same problem with the originals, and I'll talk about that more in a moment. Being the first of its kind, it's a tube-fed magazine, but it's really awkward because the tube is underneath the barrel, which normally is not a problem in like something you think of as a modern shotgun where you load underneath. But you don't load underneath in the 1887, you load through the action. So you have to drop the round in, past the lifter/carrier and into the tube magazine. That holds 5, then you could put 1 on that lifter, and then again, you could put 1 in the tube. But this, if you're doing this slowly at a table, it's not a problem. I mean, it's not that big a deal. I've got dummy rounds here. These are just fakes. And you drop them in there. And if you're watching what you're doing and kind of lean it forward, you can slide them in. Like 1, and you kind of, it's slow, right? This is a slow process. But if you're doing this administratively and not under, oh, there you go, and not under time stress, you're fine. Now, also though, by modern standard, by the standards of the time, this being a repeater, still light years better than any coach gun that only held 2, right? Now, once you've got those rounds in the tube and you close the lever action, it doesn't actually drop one onto the carrier/lifter until you pull the trigger. What you heard there was not just the hammer falling, but a round dropping onto that lifter or carrier. And then when I cycle the action, it raises it to the height of the bore and then chambers the round. Pull the trigger and it repeats. 1 drops onto the carrier, that fired that round. Right, so that's how it works. And when you've got ammo that it likes, it's not bad and it can be quite reliable. However, even when the gun's functionally perfect, you still have problems like this. You have to run it forcefully to eject the rounds. If you don't, you'll end up pulling a shell off the top of it. Certain ammunition choices help with that. In some instances, you put the wrong ammo in this that the gun doesn't like, and it won't extract at all, and you need a rod to get it bumped out. But let's say you've got ammo that it likes, you've done your homework, you've figured the gun out, you've maintained it properly, and you've got that ammunition that it likes. It still has other issues. So When I was at Deadeye, now this is the Chiappa version. I have not heard of this happening with the Chinese ones, but all of these reproductions, and again, the originals, all have their own unique problems. In fact, the problems are sort of unique to each gun to a degree. You get your gun and it'll have its own quirk that you got to figure out. But I was shooting this and having reasonable success with this at Deadeye, and I had shot this a little bit at Cowboy Action as well. And then on one of the stages, it started having occasionally, it didn't fire, but I thought that was just an ammunition thing. But on the last stage of the day, it failed me miserably. Close it, click. Open it, close it, click. New ammunition, open it, close it, click. It would not fire. It was like the firing pin was broken. But then I went home and I was like, well, what's wrong with this gun now? And so the first thing I thought was, well, one would assume it'd be the firing pin, right? So I ordered a new firing pin from Taylor's. They got it to me quickly. Kudos to them. Installed the new firing pin, didn't do a damn thing. Same exact problem. So then I was talking on my Discord server, and there was another person who had a Chiappa version of this gun, and they're like, oh, when I got mine, the hammer, which by the way is a really weird looking component. This is the hammer right there, and this extends down. Right, that's the hammer right here. It's a really Rube Goldberg design. He said that his hammer had been soft and it had actually mushroomed out at the front of it and was therefore not striking the firing pin with enough force because it was shorter than it needed to be after an extended amount of firing and use. I looked at the hammer that was in here and I was like, it doesn't necessarily look like that, but you know what? Why not? So I ordered a new hammer. The hammer came, I installed it, it immediately fixed the gun. I ordered a new hammer from Taylor's. They got it shipped to me very quickly. I appreciate that. And so now I'm putting ammunition into this thing. And let's see if that solved the problem. Shall we? All right, let's see. Well, wow. That's really what happened. The hammer deformed over firing it over time. This one was purchased in 2001, so it's a little bit of an older version. I'm hoping that the new hammer they sent me just now is properly hardened, so this won't happen again. The person on my Discord said that they solved the problem by drilling and tapping and putting a hardened screw on the face of the hammer, therefore removing any issue of any kind of hardening issues that exist on the hammer that they got from Chiappa through whoever they fielded it from. Now, I'm hoping the new hammer doesn't have that problem, and I will fire it until it fails again. And at that point, if it does, then hopefully it does not, I will do that exact same thing. I will drill and tap and put a hardened screw in there. But let's go ahead and turn the camera around and look a little closer at this gun and a few other things that are just kind of weird. All right, so first of all, let me just show you this again. So you open the action, actually have to fire it, open it, and now there is the carrier and the actual barrel. But to load it, you have to drop the round in, push the carrier down all the way, and then at that point, seat the round into the tube magazine. You can see this is quite a fiddly process. I'm just gonna do 2 of them. Then once you close it and fire it, round will get onto the carrier. Hard to do on camera. This will lift if you do it forcefully enough, and then in theory, line up with the chamber. Fire, same thing. All right, when that's working, that's all great. Another thing that's weird about this gun, however, is this right here. These are the screws that hold the carrier in place. These come loose all the time. In fact, is this one loose? Yep, it's loose now. So I tighten that. You have to tighten that regularly. Those screws fall out on either side, and your gun will become inoperable. Now, one solution to that would be to Loctite these, of course, only with blue or maybe something removable, certainly not red. Because guess what? If you need to disassemble the gun to repair it, you got to pull these screws out. And I guarantee you, you're eventually going to be disassembling this gun to repair it. I don't care if it's an original or a reproduction from any company, you will be. That's just how it works. That said, it's actually pretty easy to disassemble and reassemble, and that part surprised me. It's not a big deal to actually take this gun apart and put it back together. You can see also, this little pin is held in by this spring. That sometimes can get loose. Got to keep an eye on that. So essentially, while you're using this, there's an element of in-flight missile repair. Make sure these screws don't come loose. Make sure your pin isn't falling out. Make sure the screw's not falling out on this side. Make sure it's not improperly lubricated or overly lubricated so that it won't work. Make sure you cycle it with enough force that it actually ejects the round. Make sure you've got it properly loaded. Make sure you're using the right ammunition so that it doesn't actually seize up on you. This is not just a problem with the Chiappa. In fact, the Chiappa is kind of the top of the line reproduction on the market. This is a problem with every 1887. It's just inherent with the design. So ultimately, I'm not telling you whether you should or shouldn't get one of these. You should or shouldn't want one of these. When they're running, 7 rounds on deck of a repeating shotgun's pretty cool. If you learn to run it forcefully enough, it is reliable with the right ammunition. And if you learn all the idiosyncrasies and make sure that your screws aren't falling out and that your hammer hasn't gotten mushroomed out, etc., you will have a gun that will fire 7 or more rounds as you reload it reliably for quite a while. Again, in 1887, that was a huge deal. Now, in 1893, Winchester went ahead and went along with John Browning, and he designed the first repeating pump action commercially manufactured. There's others, I know. But the 1893 Winchester was the first reasonably successful one. Wasn't strong enough for smokeless powder. 1897, they come out with the pump action mod. The 1893 improved. That becomes a standard for all shotguns moving forward in the future. Almost every pump action shotgun you have right now at least functions similarly to an 1897 designed by John Browning for Winchester. Now, the reason these are on the market is twofold. One, the movie Terminator 2. The pop culture references, and video games at this point, but the pop culture references around the 1887 are paramount and everywhere. And it's the reason this is a popular gun. In reality, it is a gun that is way more popular than it should be based on its design, and that's even based on the words of the designer himself, John Browning. Now, the other reason this is popular is the sport of cowboy action shooting. Cowboy action shooting brought a lot of reproduction Old West firearms to the market, and I'm very thankful for that shooting community and their commercial power in making that possible, mostly in Italy, Chiappa here, and a lot of handguns, rifles, all that stuff. And this is one of the shotguns that's legal to use in SAS, the Single Action Shooting Society. Now, they don't load the magazine. They do a drop 2 modification where they have the gun change a little bit, and when they take 2 rounds, they pop it in. Carrier falls just low enough that it all lines up, and then you can fire 2 rapidly, because it's meant to be competitive with other shotguns being used in SAS, like side-by-side coach guns, etc. But at Deadeye, Russell Fagan used my original Winchester 1897, and I landed up using my 1897 on my second day of shooting because this one broke on the first day. And the truth is, if you want a repeating Old West style shotgun, one that's tube fed and holds at least 5 rounds, the reality is what you want is an 1897. The problem is, reproduction 1897s are now hard to acquire. In fact, the Chinese reproductions are now more expensive and more valuable than originals. Nothing wrong with going with an original, but you got to make sure that, of course, it's not worn out, and you might have to repair things in an original. So this leads you to a problem in that if you want to shoot cowboy-style shotgun, you've got some limitations and some choices to make. Do you get a repeater like this that has all the weird foibles that exist? Do you get an original 1897 and hope that it's not been all worn out by its 30 owners before you? Or do you just get a side-by-side coach gun and deal with the fact that you're going to be loading every 2 rounds? The coach gun is incredibly reliable. It's going to work every time unless something really catastrophic happens. This gives you 7 rounds of a repeater if you can get it to work. And the 97's the best of breeds, but you're dealing with an old gun that's been around a long time, or you're paying a premium for a Chinese reproduction that may or may not be optimal. It's an interesting world in that regard. But if you're still interested in an 1887, I'm not going to tell you not to get one, but just know what you're getting into. And don't let the movies or the video games or anyone lie to you. Interesting gun, which is what makes it popular, but so often these interesting guns are really troublesome, for lack of a better term. It's the reason they're interesting is because they're sort of rare and weird, and it's that very state of them being rare and weird that make them the problem, and the fact the common guns that aren't rare and weird are less interesting and less exciting because they're common. But you know why they're common? Because they work well. It's an interesting dilemma, and it speaks to the human condition in some strange way. Anyways, this is a follow-up to one of my Deadeye videos. You're going to see a lot more Old West firearms on here, not only in relation to just my interest in the Old West, but Deadeye are division at brutality matches that emphasize Old West style shooting and Old West firearms. If you're interested in joining us, you can do that at brutalitymatches.org. Early access for Patreons with discounts. And if you aren't into that or just can't do that, consider supporting the channel in general. This channel is supported by viewers like you. Without you, this channel doesn't exist, and that's been the case for its entire history. Patreon.com/InRangeTV, and literally every dollar counts. If you can't do either of those, just subscribe to the channel and share with your friends, because the algorithm absolutely hates this work. It's firearms related, it's historically related, and we're not playing the fiddle to YouTube's burning Rome or Pompeii or whatever it was. We're not playing their game. We're doing what we want to do, and we're doing it for an audience that hopefully respects it and appreciates it. Patreon.com/InRangeTV, brutalitymatches.org, or share and subscribe, or all of the above. Anyways, and if you can't do any of that, you know what? Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching, and hopefully this gave you an education into the realities of shooting an 1887 Winchester repeating shotgun. Thanks for watching.